Hey, can you hear me?
Good. Yeah. How are you, Calvin?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, bud.
I really appreciate you hopping on pretty quick. So just to give you a little bit about kind of the podcast before we start and everything.
Yeah.
I kind of started that this year as well as like a YouTube channel, just dive
Okay.
my journey to reach the professional level. And right now I got called back next month for Flower City and Rochester with
Okay.
So my goal is to kind of inspire kids and athletes and people of all ages to go after their dreams rather than subsiding to their fears. So I just thought
Yeah.
that, especially me being a shorter goalkeeper as well, you're someone that I always admired because I watched a lot of your career at San Jose. I just turned 21, so I kind of
Okay.
the end of it. So
Yeah.
you were a big, role model for me, especially because, there wasn't a lot of goalkeepers under like 6 foot. So
Yeah.
it was always cool to see that and always kind of gave me that motivation. So like super
Nice.
excited to have you here.
Cool. Cool. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So one of the first kind of things I wanted to like just kind of see your opinion on is um so I think if you were to ask a lot of coaches nowadays, the perfect goalkeeper would height wise would be, I would say, over 6 foot. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people kind of try to fill that profile. So my question, and this is just a genuine question as well, like why do you think that is, besides the obvious, like height advantage can help in goalkeeping? Because I mean, players like you, Nick Raimondo, and now Max Crepeau for Vancouver, like the shorter goalkeepers,
Yeah.
um, can be successful as well. So why do you think coaches, scouts, teams gravitate towards, players that are typically over 6 foot?
I think it goes back to exactly what you said. I just think that there's this kind of unwritten standard or bias or whatever that, there's a minimum requirement kind of thing, So I think that again, depending on what country you're in as well, it might be a little bit more, a little bit less, but I think it's they just go, oh, as long as he's 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", that's to me that's kind of the standard everybody looks for, and I don't know if there's really much method to the madness. I'm sure, yeah, if you really break it down, probably guys in that in that height range, you know might save a little bit more, might get to a little bit more, but it's I don't think it's this huge just discrepancy between taller and shorter. I just think it's just something that's kind of always in their heads, and they just kind of go back to that. Oh, he's got to be 6'1" or 6'2" or six, whatever they've kind of grown up with and known. They just kind of stick with.
Mhm. Absolutely. So I'm interested to hear as well because I've seen you talk about it a little bit because I'm only 5'11". So a lot of the things that, a lot of the ways that I had to play early on, one of the best pieces of advice I got from a coach was to watch goalkeepers that kind of fit my build and
Hmm.
playing style, so to speak. So I'm curious. I noticed because I'm not like 6'2", 6'3", I had to be really good in different areas. So for me, I think that I excel in like shot stopping, distribution. I think I'm really quick and explosive. So I'm just curious to hear from your standpoint. Did you feel that as well, or did you feel like you had to be maybe not overcompensate for the lack, but more just kind of switch up your playing style, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, yeah, I think, every goalkeeper needs to understand his or her strength and his or her weaknesses, you play to those, but you also work on your weaknesses. Obviously being 5'9", the first thing everybody says is, well, he can't deal with high balls and he can't deal with bodies around his box and dealing with, pressure. And, the higher levels I went, the more I had to adjust to those, and the more I had to get used to bigger and stronger bodies. Even going from youth national teams to from the 17s to 20s, from the 20s into college. From college into the USISL back then. Now it's a USL, and even from USL into MLS. Every time you take a step up, the speed's quicker. The players are stronger, they're better. So it always took me a little while to adjust. But at the end of the day, because I was quick, because I had a good vertical, and the fact that I would spend a lot of extra time dealing with crosses and dealing with bodies and figuring out, even from the USISL. I remember my last year when I played in Hershey, Pennsylvania, before I went full time with the crew. There were balls where, because a lot of those crosses were floated. So for me, it was, as long as I got my feet going, and I could use my footwork, I'm going to get my vertical jump in. And now I'm going to be over somebody catching it or boxing it. When I went into the MLS, more balls were whipped into the box. So now that range gets cut down a little bit. So it took me a little while. There were times in the early days where, I would start to come and then realize, oh, okay, that's not as, it's not as floated as I thought. And I remember Greg Androulis at one point, he was the coach at Columbus in my early days, and, just pulled me aside one day and said, look, just let your defenders deal with some of it sometimes. You don't have to come for everything. And we did a lot of work. He was an ex-goalkeeper, so we did a lot of extra work where he would put bodies around me, and he would just have guys from different areas just serving balls in, and he would tell the boys just to crash them, just get them to deal with it. And it's a little bit old school, but I enjoyed it. But it also made me figure out, okay, what I can catch and what I need to box, and deal with and put in a good area in case, I've got a 6'3" guy about to knock me on my ass. So, just different things like that every time you step up, you definitely have to learn how to adjust a little bit. But at the same time, you still want to work on that. You don't want to say that, oh, well, for instance, if you're talking about distribution, well, my right foot's no good, but I'm not going to work on it. I'll just have a really, really good left foot, no, you have to work on it. So you have to work on your deficiencies and try to make them part of your game and part of your strengths of your game.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think one thing I've learned through going slowly through the phases of playing is that it's only your weakness if you let it be your weakness, if you're not putting in that work. And so I definitely agree with that mindset, because especially for me, I always felt like, I wasn't supposed to kind of keep climbing up the ladder, so to speak, as a player. The coaches didn't always view me as, the one to make it, and keep going. So for me, I can definitely resonate with that. So one thing now, kind of switching the gear from that to mindset, which for me has always played a huge part in playing and in life. One thing that you said one time on an interview, I remember watching this as a little kid, and I remember thinking, wow, like this guy, like it changed my whole perspective of training and my goals. But you said, let me get it up. So you were basically saying it doesn't matter how quick you make it to the MLS or, where you want to be. It's about how long you stay. And for me, when I heard you say that, I just remember being like, all right, like I have to keep going.
So that actually came from a good buddy of mine, Scott Garlick. So when I started my professional career, I left UNC Charlotte after my junior season. I signed with the Carolina Dynamo. And Scotty Garlick and Aiden Heaney were the two goalkeepers there. And you talk about another shorter goalkeeper. Aiden Heaney was, wasn't the tallest either. And it was really cool that he actually went to Charlotte prior to me. He went to the Carolina Dynamo. Then he spent some time in New England with the Revolution in the early days. Then he came back down. And that's the time I kind of joined him there. Scotty was kind of going up in his journey. Scotty, a little bit taller, a little skinny, but very athletic, very good goalkeeper. Both of them were very good. But Scotty was starting to go up on his journey. So he would spend a lot of time. If somebody got injured in DC, he would get called up from Carolina. But at one point I remember, because I'm the young, arrogant kid who thinks he knows everything about everything at whatever I was, 19, 20 years old, and I've got these two seasoned pros there with me. And one afternoon we were in the gym, and I was annoyed, as I don't know why, or I kind of know why, but Scotty had pulled me aside at one point in the gym, and he says, hey, hey Bushy, what's up? And he's like, you seem a little annoyed. And I said, yeah. I said, I just want to get, I want to get to the MLS so bad, and I want to prove all these people wrong and da da da. And he kind of looked at me, and he put his arm around me, and he said, look, he said, and like I said, he was doing it, so he had a better understanding of it than I. But he said, look, it's not how quickly you get to the top of the mountain. It's how long you stay once you get to the top of the mountain. He said the easy work is getting there. The hard work is when people want to knock you off of. And I never thought of it that way. Just like I said, I only thought of it as, well, I got to get there. I got to get there. And how quickly can I get there? But when Scotty told me that day, it really kind of resonated with me. I remember going back to my apartment and really thinking about that. And I was like, man, like, yeah, that's, I don't want to go up for a week or a month or even a year, like I want to have a long career. And so that day kind of changed my mindset on it. I was always willing to do the work and train and stay after and go in early and all that. But that mindset, change that Scotty kind of opened up for me, really, really helped me, really allowed me to say, okay, it's okay being in the present moment and being in Greensboro, North Carolina, and trying to get games at the minor league level, in hopes of eventually staying long-term in MLS.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think too, I remember first hearing you say that, and I remember being like, wow, like, because for me too, growing up, I played with a lot of guys who, went pro very young, went through like, I'm from New England, so they went through the New England Revolution Academy. And then I had my experiences as well. It was actually kind of funny. I remember it was like me and two other guys kind of that are a couple other guys actually that were kind of coming up through our club, and we all got scouted to go to like the Revs like ID centers, and we kind of kept moving up. And I remember I'd been training with the academy for like 3 years. And it was going really, really well. And then my third year, they were like, all right, we're finally going to bring you in. And I remember as a kid, like, that's the best, you've worked so hard. And then they ended up, I remember the day they were supposed to like take me, they ended up coming to me and being like, oh, we took someone else. And I remember being like, wow, like I just remember being like, damn, like that feeling, was hard to deal with. And obviously, you do what you want with that. And I felt like I did a good job of turning it into fuel. But I just that for me really changed it. And I think sometimes, even now, I get so focused on being like, and a lot of other players probably get so focused on, oh, I want to be here. But it's like you have to put in the work, you have to have that patience and that almost gratitude as well for where you are now.
Absolutely.
And keep developing. So I think that's a huge point that not everyone talks about. And
Yeah.
oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I think that's sometimes that comes a little bit easier as you get older, right? I think when you're younger, it's I want it now. I want the instantaneous gratification. Where I think as you get older, and you understand the process, and if your mindset is open and you're willing to, like you just said, say like, hey, I'm going to enjoy the present moment. And yes, I want to be there, but my focus can't be there. It's got to be where I am at that present moment. And I think if kids can do that, and it's hard when you're young. I mean, I deal with young goalkeepers here with Indy Fire all the time. And sometimes when I explain that to them, it's a little bit harder for them to understand. But again, I'm the old guy, so I've been there, done it, and I know what they're going through. But if you can have that mindset of, okay, yeah, I want to get there, but right now I'm here. What can I do to get from here to there? And let me do the work that's required. So now you hit on a very good point there.
No, absolutely. And I'm curious too, at your time at the Chicago Fire, did you ever cross paths with Greg Sutton by chance?
I trained very early with Sutton. Where was I? He was in Chicago. I got called up once or twice when there were injuries. So I know we had trained together very, very briefly. And then actually was he in Toronto when I went to Toronto at one point?
Yeah, he was.
I think he was on the Toronto roster as well when they picked me up. When did they pick me up? That was before Chicago. So when Columbus released me, I spent a fantastic 2 weeks with Toronto, but in Bradenton, Florida. So I actually never got to Toronto, but Sutton was on the team. So I trained with him for a few weeks there. And prior to that, one of my call-ups from the minor leagues, I spent a little bit of time with Greg in Chicago as well.
Awesome. Because I just asked that because I think every player at some point has a turning point of motivation. And I played for him in college.
Mm.
So for me, I had been flown out. My college journey was really interesting. So I'd been flown out to a couple D1 schools, and that was my goal. Was like I was super excited, but then things didn't turn out the way I expected. There was like financial stuff as well. So I ended up playing D3 my first year, and I remember mentally that was such a hard blow, and especially now that I'm a little older, I realize my ego and all of that. But
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like you realize because like you think because I even though I'm still relatively young, I can see and look back and I'm like, wow, like if I should have enjoyed those times more. But and I was kind of going through that phase and I was like, it was really good in terms of developing mentally. But when I had reached out to Greg and he ended up bringing me to Montreal to play there and all that stuff, I remember thinking to myself, all right, yeah, like this is the one kind of spark fire of like someone believing in me that
Mhm.
I needed. So along your career, did you have a moment like that? Did you have something that really kind of was like, wow, like this is it. This is what I want to do.
I've had a few. You talk about people believing in you. I've been very fortunate. I've had a few people that have, picked me up at certain moments. That kind of give you that boost. I think first and foremost, probably the earliest two were when I was with the U17 national team. The goalkeeper coach, his name was Peter Miller, English gentleman. He lives down in Florida now. Him and the coach, his name was Roy Reese. I think he was Welsh, if I remember correctly. Those were kind of the first two that really stood by me. Again, I was 15 years old, so I was probably, a buck 25, maybe, I was tiny. But they believed in me. They knew that I was a good goalkeeper. They stuck with me for 2+ years of an entire cycle from start to finish. In that journey from the start of a under 17 World Cup cycle, we qualified. We went to World Championships in Japan, and I played in I won't say I played every game, but I was the starter for an entire 2-year process. And there were some bumps along the road. There was definitely some bumps along the road, but they stuck by me. And then Peter recommended me to the under 20s right after that. Now, back then they didn't have like they do now, where you have all the intermediate age groups,
Mhm.
right? You got the 18s, you got the 19s, then you have the 20s. We didn't have that. We went from straight 17s to 20s. And Peter kept recommending me to the head coach, Jon Kowalski. But John's a little bit old school, and first thing he says is not tall enough.
Mhm.
So I had to battle that again. But Peter stuck by me very early, and so did Roy. And then it was, going to school in Charlotte, North Carolina, which again wasn't very similar to your situation. I was supposed to go to UVA with Bruce Arena. Long story short, that didn't quite work out. Next thing I know, I'm at UNC Charlotte. Didn't know much about him, but enjoyed my 3 seasons that I played there. Again, Frank believed in me from day one. Within 2 weeks, I was a starter there. The goalkeeper coach, he's basically my second dad. His name is Eric Bauder. Everybody calls him EV. Fantastic goalkeeper coach, probably in my opinion the best in the United States. He's trained the most pro goalkeepers in the United States, but you'll never hear about him because he doesn't publicize himself. So I was very fortunate that he was there, and he kind of had the blueprint to get me from where I was to become a pro. But again, a lot of bumps along the way, a lot of bumps. But those two stuck by me for those 3+ years, and even today. I mean, I still talk to those guys. I talk to EV, at least once a week. And I talk to Frank every few weeks. So, those were two more that believed in me.
Mhm.
And then, you look at my pro career, and my early years in the USL, I would go up and down to MLS if somebody got injured, and so I'd get a little taste of it.
Mhm.
But again, nobody really took that chance or whatever. I don't even think it's a chance. Let's say gave me an opportunity to become full time until Greg Andrulis did in Columbus.
Mhm.
And again, I had known Greg since I was 15 when we used to work number one goalkeepers camps together, Joe Matchnick's camps. So he was the first one to, draft me and sign me full time into MLS. And he was the first one to, within half a season, make a change from a goalkeeper, who had won an MLS Cup and Tom Prestis,
Mhm.
into, and make that change and start playing me full time and never look back. So, there's another guy, who believed in me and stuck by me through thick and thin as well.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And I asked that question because I think, a common question that I think a lot of people ask is like, what was it like to have people doubt you and all that stuff? But one thing I realized as I got older, as someone who has, I would say, had a lot of coaches, I don't want to say doubt me, but just not necessarily like rate me. Um,
Mhm, mhm.
I realized that you can kind of switch that mindset and really appreciate who you have
Yeah,
that be there and be
yeah,
that kind of service to you. So I always find that interesting, just kind of
yeah.
seeing that and kind of having that perspective on it as well. So another thing that I would like to bring up as well is, so in my opinion, in order to be good, you need to be consistent, but to be
Mhm,
great, you need to consistently be good. And for
mhm.
me, that was you for, I mean, long stints in the league. So I'm always really interested in people who are consistent, because I think consistency is one of those things that, especially I've noticed as I get closer and closer to the pro level, is
Mhm.
what makes or breaks people. Because everyone can have one good game
Oh
or
yeah.
something, but to do it over and over again,
Yep.
that is a lot of behind the scenes work and
Yep.
all that. So what did you think helped get you there? Like, what were some things that you felt played a role in that?
I think I learned very early. I talked about EV, Eric Vaughter at Charlotte. We were very fortunate that every winter when we would be training, the USL pros would come down and start training with him prior to their preseasons. So we had guys like Mike McGinty, Jeff Duback, Aiden Haney's. We had all these pros coming in and actually training with us in the evenings.
Mhm.
They all wanted to train with EB. They all came up through him. And so for me, you talk about consistency. That started right after my freshman year. When I was like, holy moly, look at who's here. Look at these guys, and just watching them train and just noticing what they do when they're working, and the consistency, whatever they were doing, catching volleys, collapse diving, whatever. It was just bop, 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 and it was just such a rhythm to it. And I remember talking to EB after that first winter, going, I don't know if I'll ever be good enough, but I want to do what they do. And obviously you have the blueprint, because there was like 7 or 8 of them that kept coming around. I was like, you know, I want to do that. You show me how to do it, kind of thing. So I think that was the first time I really learned that it's not really about, can I pull something out of the top corner in 1 second, and maybe give up a bad goal the net. It was more about doing, and I call it now with my kids, I call it the meat and potatoes of goalkeeping. Can you do the meat and potatoes of goalkeeping every time you're asked? Because 95% of the time, a goalkeeper has to do the routine, the mundane stuff. So if you can get that consistent and do that day in and day out, whether it's catching crosses or distribution or shot stopping or whatever, um, that is going to help lead you onto a consistent career. Um, one of the best quotes I've ever gotten. And at first I wasn't sure it was a positive, but in San Jose, Jason Batty was my goalkeeper coach, and I spent the most time with him. We spent 5 years together, and it was great. It was an awesome 5 years. But that was the longest time I had spent with one goalkeeper coach. And I remember one day, I don't know, probably year 3, 4, somewhere in that ballpark, where we were on this good run of games and things going well. And one of the reporters asked him, kind of a similar question, what makes Jon so consistent and so good and da da da. And his direct quote was, Jon is consistently boring. And I remember reading it, and at first I was like, well, that's kind of a backhanded compliment, I think. So I went in that morning and I kind of busted his balls a little bit. I'm like, Bass, really? I'm consistently boring? And then when he explained it, I said, you know what? I actually like that. I really like that. Consistently boring. That summed me up, and so I thought it was great. And I tell all my kids here, that's what I want on a day-to-day basis, whether you're, one of our academy kids, one of our high school kids, one of our pro kids, I want consistently boring goalkeepers. I want them to be able to do what they need to do time in and time out, and not make it look like you're looking for the cameras, that you're trying to make a fancy save. Just give me the meat and potatoes consistently. So, I think you're right. For me, it was just, I didn't need, and I never necessarily even wanted, articles written about me or acclaim or awards. I only wanted team stuff, and I got very awkward when I got individual awards, because it was nice, a nice accomplishments, but it made me feel awkward because I didn't want to be different from the group. The thing that I really enjoyed was after a game, if the head coach or the assistant coach or somebody just kind of walked by, gave me a nice pat on the shoulder, and was like, hey, well done. Like that to me meant everything. And I did, it meant I did my work, and I prepared Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday for the Saturday night game. And that was very important to my consistency as well. I would have a checklist in my head of, all right, it's Monday, we got to do this. It's Tuesday, I got to do this. It's Wednesday, I got to do this. So by the time I left the facility on a Friday afternoon, kind of my checklist for the week was done. Regardless of how the game went at the next day, regardless of the score. But I always felt if I got my work done each day, that I gave myself the best opportunity to win that game and play consistent in that game.
Absolutely. And I think that's awesome. That, like, I think a lot of people as well, that are maybe not so much in the goalkeeping world, only think goalkeepers do a good job when they make an upper 90 save. But
Yeah.
I do a little bit of coaching as well. And one thing I always try to stress is the fact that, listen, as a goalkeeper, like, you're going to make that upper 90 save a very small percentage of the time. Like, the best goalkeepers in the world are looking to move their feet, get behind the ball, do the simple stuff. So I couldn't agree more with you. And as well, I noticed you mentioned the individual awards. And I think that mindset of kind of not necessarily liking those, necessarily individual awards, but the coach coming up behind you. I don't know if you've ever read this book called Relentless by Tim Grover.
Okay.
But it was Michael Jordan's trainer, but he kind of touched on that. And it was just interesting you said that, because he broke up different mindsets into categories. And that's just cool, because like, that's what, like, his definition of a cleaner was. But
Okay.
yeah, no, so it's weird if you didn't read the book, but so sorry for bringing that up.
No, that's cool. That's cool.
But yeah, so definitely interesting. And I also kind of, we'll wrap it up soon. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but one thing I noticed as well, especially my time here in Rochester, I've noticed, like you said, the meat and potatoes on the field of goalkeeping and all that. But I realized even that, like, off the field, being an athlete 24/7, did you feel like that played a big role? Because I was surprised here. Right now I'm on trial for, like I said, an NISA team, and these players, like, want to go pro, but I'm so surprised or even some that have had contracts in USL and whatnot, their lifestyles off the field are so conflicting sometimes. And I was really shocked by that. So do you think, being that athlete 24 hours a day played a role into your longevity?
Absolutely. I was so one track mind. I was so focused. I had blinders on. Nothing else mattered each day until I got my work done on the field, or I got my work done in the gym. It was the off season or whatever. I often looked at it this way of athletes, no matter what sport, they have an expiration date, right? Because it's a physical job. And some of us have, are very fortunate and have, longer expiration dates, and some have shorter, just depending on, circumstances within your career. Um, but I looked at it in the fact of, at some point my career is going to end. And then I have the rest of my life, whenever that does, to, do all that other stuff that I maybe sacrificed during
Mhm.
my playing time, whether it was, going out to parties, or, eating bad food, or, not working out, whatever it was,
Mhm.
you know. But during my career, I always said I wanted to do everything
Mhm.
physically and mentally possible to make me the best goalkeeper I could be.
Mhm.
And I wanted to do that for as long as my career was.
Mhm.
And so I was so one track mind,
Mhm.
that nothing else mattered until I got home after training. Then it was kind of like, okay, what's going on in the world today?
Yeah. Yeah.
But until then, it was, I woke up, I had breakfast, I was in the facility early because I like to lift before training. It was, what's my routine? Let me get in, bop, 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 get
Mhm.
everything done, eat lunch, go home. Okay, what's going on today, guys? Kind of thing. Um, and I definitely think, especially as I got older, right? I mean, you think about it. I think I played till I was almost 42 years old.
Mhm.
41, 42, whatever it was. So, especially those last couple of years, when I was here with Indy 11, like, if I wanted to, I probably could have been like, yeah, you know what, today I'm a little tired, or I'm a little bit, I don't, I can take it off because I'm the starting goalkeeper, and I'm the goalkeeper coach. I'm not going to bench myself,
Yeah.
but I also knew that I was setting the example for the two young goalkeepers we had.
Mhm.
And I also wanted to make sure I continued to do my work. So on a Saturday night, we got the result, or hopefully got the result, but I played well, and I played consistent. I gave my team an opportunity to win. So, it was all about just finding my routines and consistently doing them,
Mhm.
and never taking a day off, a play off. Even in the off seasons, I would take 2 weeks as soon as the season ended, and I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't work out, I wouldn't lift, I wouldn't play soccer, nothing. I would just kind of get away from it for 2 weeks and, relax. But as soon as that kind of 2 weeks, that was enough for me. I was back in the gym. I was back with the strength coaches every year doing that. I would usually take probably another 2 weeks off, um, from playing or from training goalkeeping wise, while I was in the gym. So the first couple of weeks I wasn't doing any goalkeeping. I was just in the gym with the strength coaches. But then, 2 3 weeks would go by, and then it was time to add the goalkeeping back into it.
Mhm.
But I never, I just love being on the field. I love being in the gym. I was a gym rat. I still am. I work out every day in my house here, but it was part of who I am, and it was just like, this is what this, I never looked at it as a job.
Mhm.
I said, this is what I need to do to be the best I can be,
Mhm.
and why not do it? Because again, there's an expiration date on this job. It's not like, golf, where you can play in your 60s or 70s. You can't do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think too, you touched on something like those sacrifices and all that work you have to put in. One thing that was shocking for me so far is kind of almost in a sense how lonely the journey to where you want to be can be sometimes, because you have to, a lot of people, what I've realized, don't understand. And you kind of have to be obsessed and sometimes maybe like in other people's eyes crazy and focus on how have you be. So
Not
um
crazy, not crazy, obsessed. You
obsessed.
have
Yeah.
to you have to be obsessed to be at the top of your game. You have
Yeah.
to be. Doesn't matter what. If you ask Tom Brady, I guarantee you Tom Brady's obsessed with his position and the intricacies of being a quarterback, you
Absolutely.
know?
Absolutely. And I think that's one thing that I've learned along the way that has played a huge, role in everything. So to kind of wrap it up here as well. So just from my small experience of slowly breaking into the professional game, if you want to call it, I've noticed, like you said earlier on, there's certain things I can do here that I couldn't do back then, and then vice versa. Like certain, starting positions on shots and in
Mhm,
balls I play. So right now, where the USL is, and then the MLS,
mhm.
from your perspective as a coach, former player, everything, what would you say the biggest difference between, say, a starting goalkeeper in the USL and then a starting goalkeeper in the MLS?
That's a great question. Obviously we have the Indy 11 right here, and some of my academy kids train with them. So I get up there, at least once a week to watch them train. So I've got a pretty good grasp on, that level. Evan Newton, who was here, who's now back in the MLS, he comes to me in the off season. Eric Dick comes to me in the off season. He's in Columbus now. So I feel I have a pretty good gauge on it. I think, those guys, again, you look at Evan Newton, I think he has most of the goalkeeping records in the USL, and he started with me in San Jose as a number 3 way back when. So I've known him for many, many years. Very, very consistent goalkeeper in USL. I mean, one of the best. But I still think it is a step up for the majority of these USL goalkeepers. There's a lot of very good USL goalkeepers. Mm-hmm. But you're talking about now, those guys can jump into a 2/3 in the MLS, right, and not miss a beat. But you're talking about going from a starter in USL to being a starter in the MLS. Mm-hmm. That's the next level. That is, look at somebody like Tim Melia or, I'm trying to think who else, or Tyler Miller up at Minnesota. These guys can change games, right? Blake over in Philly. These guys, not only are they consistent, but they can win you games, right? They can pull something out, that some of these other guys can't, and that turns the tide of the game, or that keeps them in a game, and I think that's the difference of just, it's still a step up. Yeah, there are plenty of USL goalkeepers that are very, very good, but can you make that jump, and again, not just into the MLS, but to wanting to be a starter in the MLS and consistent starter for many, many years, like a Tim Melia, it's, you got to have a little bit of something special, as well. And you've got to be able to change games, Steve Clark's another example up in Portland, sometimes a little bit unorthodox, but he gets the job done and he wins games, and so I think that's still the difference.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, that's a really good point. And it's just interesting to see your perspective on it, because it's something I ask myself all the time. Like, I'll watch a lot of USL games and then MLS games, and I'll try to pick out the different things and, oh, could he have saved it? So I was just curious to kind of hear your perspective on that. But yeah, no, that's it. I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I really appreciate you hopping on real quick, coming on a random podcast.
Yeah, nah, you're welcome. I enjoyed it. I always love talking goalkeeping. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, no, I definitely appreciate it. And yeah, I hope you have, a great rest of your day and all that stuff. So
perfect. Thanks, Alvin. I appreciate it. Make sure you tag me when you get it sorted.
definitely, without a doubt. Oh, wait, before you go, do you want to plug anything? Talk about anything, whatever, anything going on, gloves,
yeah, I mean, obviously, if you live in Indiana, you want goalkeeper training, I've got Jon Busch Goalkeeping over here in Indianapolis, Indiana. I do private, small groups, all that stuff. And I own my own glove company. It's called High Performance Goalkeeping, or we just call it HPG. So you can find that on Instagram, Twitter, and our website, hpgoalkeeping.com. So come check us out. I develop all the gloves. I've been doing that for 10 years now. So that's just another little project on the side I got.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. Sweet. So yeah, make sure that, we'll make sure we check that out. But yeah, like I said, again, thank you very much.
You got it, buddy. Have a great day and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.